So I was doing some holiday shopping recently at Home Depot and found this in their special section. This is kind of like in our holiday sales section, but what this is a Masterlock SafeSpace. At first when I saw this, I thought this is like some kind of Bluetooth speaker case for like an iPod or an iPhone or something like that. Slightly oversized to fit the Samsung Galaxies. Well, it turns out that's not what it is. What this is a small portable safe. A little bit too small to put any kind of firearm in, but there's a lot of folding knives you can put in or something like that. Really good for like cell phones and electronics, let's say, but it won't fit an iPad mini. It basically, kind of maxes out at the Samsung Galaxy phone size. But if you're trying to set up a very hasty dead drop or cache location or just secure a few valuables that are, let's say, around your bicycle or backpack, this is a cheap, ready-to-go option. These things are less than $20 at Home Depot right now. It's a small spin wheel type lock. Now, there's a lot of people who could get into these things, but they're not necessarily going to get into it super quickly. And that's where it's at least as secure as, let's say, locking in a door in an older car with something that's a little bit higher security, especially, let's say, you travel in a rental car, you don't know who may have been able to reprogram a remote or get a master key or something like that. You could chain this, let's say, to a trunk hinge or something like that. It has an attached cable, which is kind of interesting with this little hinge type setup that can stow around the rim of the box. Now, it's not waterproof, so if you use this outdoors, it's still going to have to be protected at least from rainfall. Now, as far as being cold or hot or something like that, I don't see that as too much of an issue. So let's say, for example, underneath a building or in some area, you could chain this up to a pipe really quick and have a relatively decently secure, fast way of leaving something in a relatively secure manner in a hidden location. And there's a lot of call for that sort of a thing, especially for dead drops, urban type situations, stuff like that. The other thing is, in bicycle mobile type stuff, you can integrate it with a cable lock. Now again, if you're trying to secure a $1,000 bike with a $20 lock, you're doing so in an environment where most of the people are relatively honest anyway. I don't think it's going to really help you all that much against really determined thieves in a bad neighborhood, but it slows somebody down. It's not like where somebody's just going to say accidentally carry your stuff away and say, oh, we just found it. No, it's secured. And of course that brings certain legal standards into play because somebody does have to break something to get into it. The lock mechanism is programmable. They come from the factory at 000. While it's open, you would slide this to the side and then reset these to whatever number you want. This button here is what you can use to pop it open. This button here with a little arrow here is what would release your cable lock. So you could use the opening and the cable lock separately, but they would take the same combination. That's where this sort of thing gets really useful around motorcycles and stuff. Let's say you're going swimming, and you went to the beach on your motorcycle. You want to secure a few things, but not necessarily have the keys on you in your shorts when you're swimming. That's another useful way to deal with this type of situation. It's also something you could secure up underneath the vehicle if you wanted to, but if you're bouncing around on the road, you always run that risk of something bouncing off, so I wouldn't necessarily leave something in there when you're bouncing down the road. Which also gets us into an interesting couple of theories on a live drop, such as strapping and chaining one of these to, let's say, something in a bus or a commuter train or something that travels on a known schedule. Somebody else can get on that train or that bus and retrieve the item. Because these things are all over the place and would look the same. And so nobody would know what town or what city this thing was placed in. And so there's a level of security and deniability with it, with having a lockbox, let's say, in a restroom somewhere, or up in the ducting, something like that. As far as securing a little bit of valuables while traveling, such as precious metals or something like that, it's reasonably good for that, given that a lot of the types of thieves that would get into a vehicle and burglarize a vehicle tend to be convenience thieves. They're looking for something unlocked, or they break a window, and they're getting in. They're not necessarily bringing a lot of tools with them. Now, if you have a lot of tools in your vehicle anyway, that's problematic, because they could perhaps put some tools into action and then cut things and then bash this open with a sledgehammer later. But at $15 to $20, I would say it's kind of an interesting option if you need to secure a few small items and set up a cache location that would be larger than, say, the little key lock boxes that real estate people use in houses. This would allow you to lock, let's say, a TV remote somewhere for a TV that would be publicly accessible. But you'd be able to lock the remote and have some controlled access for that. You would also have controlled access for keys, maybe a cell phone, maybe an emergency use cell phone that only certain people are going to be authorized to have access to. So you'd be able to leave that cell phone fully charged in the box, ready to go. If somebody gets to a particular location, they open up the box, get it to cell phone, or perhaps a two-way radio like one of the Baofeng radios. You go to a certain location, you know that there's going to be a drop someplace, you pick up the radio and make a coded call from there. That's another thing that these things can be useful for. However, the two-way radio batteries tend not to work very well in storage for a while. So if you lose memory on that or something like that, I would say, one of the ways you do that is you leave it unprogrammed so that nobody gets into this and finds out what frequency you were intending to be on or something like that. But it's kind of an interesting item. I thought I'd show here kind of a hard plastic with a metal locking mechanism on here. Not super high security, but better than nothing, and I think would serve a niche for some of the people who watch my channel.